Olivia Thompson adjusted her reading glasses as she focused on the illustration in front of her. With skillful fingers stained with blue and red ink, she made a few notes in the margin of the drawing. Her dark hair, usually tied up in a messy bun, partially fell over her concentrated face. The home office was quiet, except for the soft sound of the pencil against the paper and the occasional sigh of fatigue. At 39, Olivia had built a solid reputation as a children's book editor. Her keen eye for detail and sensitivity to stories that touched the hearts of children made her one of the most respected professionals in the field. On the bookshelf behind her desk, dozens of books published under her supervision formed a rainbow of colorful covers. When the clock struck almost midnight, she finally pushed the chair back and rubbed her tired eyes. Edward would already be asleep. Lately, this had become common. They operated on different schedules, like planets in distinct orbits that rarely aligned. In the kitchen, Olivia found a plate covered with plastic wrap and a note in her husband's meticulously organized handwriting. "Didn't want to interrupt your work." Dinner on the plate. Olivia felt a pang of sadness. 17 years of marriage reduced to notes in the kitchen and rushed conversations in the mornings. Edward Thompson, at 41, maintained the same precision as when she first met him, the methodical accountant who organized life into spreadsheets and schedules. As she heated the dinner in the microwave, Olivia reflected on the changes of the past year. Edward's weekend trips had started gradually, first once a month, then every 2 weeks, and now practically every week he left with a small suitcase, returning 2 days later, exhausted and silent. "Client visits," he explained vaguely. "Many overdue taxes to resolve." In the beginning, Olivia didn't question it. Her own job was going through an intense period with deadlines and special projects. But in the last 3 months, other signs had appeared. Phone calls that Edward took in private, quickly leaving the room. Messages on his phone that he immediately deleted. And an increasingly evident emotional distancing. In the dark room, Olivia found Edward's side of the bed empty. A note on the bedside table informed her that he had needed to leave early for another of his mysterious trips. The space between them seemed to widen each day, like pages being torn from a book that once told a unique and coherent story. Edward's office on the lower floor was a territory that Olivia rarely visited. Organized and immaculate, it reflected the methodical personality of her husband, so different from her own creative space, filled with colors and apparent chaos. That morning, driven by a mixture of concern and suspicion, Olivia decided to enter. The desk drawers were closed but not locked. In the third one she opened, she found what her heart feared, a folder with hotel reservations, train tickets to a small rural town 2 hours away, and receipts for gifts, including an expensive cashmere shawl that had certainly not been given to her. Olivia sat in Edward's chair, feeling the world spin around her. A framed photograph on the table showed the two of them on their honeymoon, young, smiling, full of promises for the future. The contrast with the present was too painful to bear. During the following week, Olivia lived in a state of torpor. She worked mechanically, reviewed illustrations, replied to emails, but her mind was fixed on a single devastating certainty: her marriage was ending. Edward, always so honest and transparent, had become a stranger with secrets. One night, while Edward was packing his small suitcase for yet another trip, Olivia decided she would confront him when he returned. She needed to hear the truth, no matter how painful it might be. That night, she remained awake for hours, mentally rehearsing what she would say, preparing herself for the end of nearly 2 decades together. The phone rang on Saturday afternoon, waking Olivia from a restless sleep on the couch. The unknown number made her heart race. "Mrs. Thompson?" asked a female voice. "I'm calling from the regional hospital. Your husband, Edward Thompson, had a minor accident." The next few hours passed like a confusing dream. Olivia quickly packed a bag, got in the car, and drove the 2 hours to the small rural town, her heart pounding in her chest. The GPS guided her through increasingly smaller country roads until she reached a community that seemed straight out of an old postcard: small wooden houses, a church with a white steeple, and green mountains in the background. The hospital was a modest 2-story building. When Olivia identified herself at the reception, the young attendant smiled kindly. "Edward is fine, ma'am. Just a few scratches from when he slipped while doing maintenance on Martha's house roof. He's in room 103. She hesitated. Actually, Martha asked to be notified as soon as you arrived. She's in the cafeteria. Confused, Olivia walked to the hospital's cafeteria. Who could this Martha be? An elderly lady with white hair pulled back into a perfect bun waved as soon as she saw her. She approached with a slightly unsure gait, supported by a cane, but with a smile that lit up her entire wrinkled face. You must be Olivia. The lady hugged her as if they were old friends. We finally meet. I'm Martha Wilson. Edward talked so much about you. Come, let's go see our stubborn patient. Stunned, Olivia followed Martha through the hospital corridors. The elderly woman talked non-stop as if she were continuing a long-standing conversation. I told him the roof was slippery, but he insisted on climbing up to clean the gutter. Men always think they're indestructible. Just like my dear James. And Carl, too. When they reached the room, Edward was sitting on the bed with a bandage on his forehead and his right arm in a sling. His face paled at the sight of Olivia at the door. Olivia. You didn't have to come, his voice trembled slightly. Martha looked from one to the other, sensing the tension in the air. With the wisdom of someone who had lived through many stories, she smiled gently. I think you two need to talk. I'll get coffee for all of us. When the door closed, a heavy silence filled the room. Olivia remained near the door, unable to move closer. Who is she, Edward? She finally asked, her voice calmer than she expected. Edward ran his good hand over his tired face. Martha was the mother of the half-brother I never knew. The answer was so unexpected that Olivia took a moment to process it. Half-brother. Over the next 20 minutes, Edward revealed a story he had never shared. 6 months ago, while organizing documents after his father's passing, he had discovered a stack of old letters and a legal child support agreement dated before his own birth. His father had had a son from a relationship prior to marrying Edward's mother, a son named Carl Wilson, who had lived his entire life in that small rural town, never knowing Edward's family. Carl died 5 years ago, Edward explained, his voice choked with emotion. Cancer. His mother, Martha, had been left alone. She had heart problems, advanced arthritis. When I found her, she was about to lose her house because she could no longer take care of everything. Olivia slowly approached the bed, feeling her previous certainties dissolve. Why didn't you tell me? Edward looked down at his hands. At first, I could barely process the fact that my father had kept his son's secret for decades. I felt anger, confusion. Then I met Martha, and she showed me photos of Carl growing up. He looked so much like me, Liv. He was my brother, and I never had the chance to meet him. Tears now ran freely down Edward's face, something Olivia had rarely witnessed in all their years of marriage. And then you were so busy with the award-winning book series. It seemed wrong to burden you with more family drama. I thought I could help Martha on the weekends without complicating your life. Just then, Martha returned with 3 cups of coffee and a compassionate smile. The next few hours passed in conversation that filled in the missing pieces of the story. Martha showed photos of Carl from her worn leather wallet, a man with a gentle smile who truly did have the same eyes as Edward. She told stories about her only son, a literature teacher at the local school and a writer in his spare time. He always wanted to publish his short stories, Martha commented with a distant look. Especially the children's book he was writing. Edward was discharged from the hospital in the late afternoon. Martha insisted that the couple stay at her house. Martha's home was an old 2-story building with a large garden. Inside, time seemed to have stopped in the 1980s. Well-preserved classic furniture, photographs in wooden frames, and a cozy, homey atmosphere. This was Carl's room, Martha explained, opening the door to a room on the upper floor. I haven't changed much since he left. The room was simple and tidy. A desk under the window was neatly organized, with books on shelves above. On the wall, diplomas and certificates displayed Carl's academic journey. Edward has been coming almost every weekend, Martha confided to Olivia while showing her the family album. Fixing things around the house, taking me to the doctor, even helping me organize the bills. An angel, just like his brother. That night, When they were finally alone in the guest room, Edward sat on the edge of the bed with a somber expression. "I'm sorry for not telling you before, Liv. At first, it was something so personal and painful. Then, it became a responsibility I took on almost without realizing." Olivia held his hand gently. "I spent weeks thinking I was losing you, when in reality, you were just finding an unknown part of your family. There's one more thing I want to show you," Edward said, carefully standing up despite his injured arm. From the closet, he took out a varnished wooden box with the initials CW carved on the lid. "I found this in Martha's attic a few weeks ago. I was trying to understand it before sharing it with you." Inside the box, neatly organized, were dozens of handwritten pages, some typed, others written by hand in elegant, flowing script. The title at the top of the first page read, "The Brothers of the Split Oak" by Carl Wilson. "It's a children's book he never finished," Edward explained, as Olivia began to read, her professional gaze immediately recognizing the exceptional quality of the writing. "It's about two brothers separated in childhood when lightning splits in half the oak where they played. Each grows up on a different side of a forest, unaware of the other's existence, but both take care of the halves of the tree." Olivia read page after page, her editorial heart drawn in by Carl's rich, heartfelt storytelling. The narrative was allegorical, profound, with that rare kind of magic that speaks to both children and adults. "It's extraordinary," she whispered, turning the yellowed pages. "But it's incomplete." "He never got around to writing the ending," Edward confirmed. "Martha said he worked on it for years, but he always hesitated to finish it or show it to publishers. I think, in some way, this story was about how he felt this unknown connection with a brother he never knew." Olivia looked up from the manuscript, an idea forming in her mind. "Edward, this deserves to be published. And I know exactly how to finish it, not by altering what Carl wrote, but by complementing his vision." The following week, after they returned home, with Martha as a temporary guest just until I recover from this cold, she insisted, Olivia presented Edward with a sketch of how they could complete Carl's manuscript. She had spent hours carefully reviewing the story, preserving Carl's tone and themes. "The brothers finally meet as adults," Olivia explained, showing Edward her drafts. "Each took care of half the tree for years, and when they reunite, they discover that the roots were never truly separated. The tree kept them connected, even when they didn't know it." Edward hugged her tightly, overwhelmed, unable to express in words what that gesture meant. The project quickly turned into a shared mission. While Edward worked from home to care for Martha, Olivia used her connections at the publishing company to bring the manuscript to life. Martha became an integral part of the process, sharing stories about Carl, helping to preserve his unique voice, and offering insights only a mother would know. She corrected phrasing, suggested favorite words Carl used, and even unearthed his early sketches for some of the characters. When the first drafts of the illustrations arrived, depicting the two brothers who subtly resembled Carl and Edward, Martha cried. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks as she held one of the pages to her heart. "He always dreamed of this," she whispered. "You've made it real." What had begun as a temporary stay soon turned into something more. With Martha's health gradually improving under the couple's care, they converted Edward's downstairs office into a cozy bedroom for her. The space was bright and warm, filled with plants and books. Olivia even placed one of Carl's framed certificates above her reading chair. "I can't accept this," Martha protested when she realized the plan. "You both have your own lives. You're already a part of it," Olivia responded sincerely, surprising even herself with how deeply she meant it. 6 months later, the house that once felt silent and distant was now alive with warmth. That afternoon, the three of them sat together in the backyard sharing tea. The late spring sun bathed the garden in golden light. Birds chirped in the trees, and a gentle breeze rustled the pages of a book resting on the table between them. The mail arrived with a special package. Edward brought it out with reverence, his hands trembling slightly as he opened the cardboard envelope. Inside was the first printed copy of The Brothers of the Broken Oak by Carl Wilson, with additional credits to Edward and Olivia Thompson. Olivia opened the book slowly. The cover was elegant, illustrated with two boys on opposite sides of a grand oak tree, its branches reaching wide, its roots glowing subtly beneath the earth. She turned to the first page. The dedication read, "For the bonds that never break, even when invisible. For Carl, whose words connected hearts that never knew each other. And for Martha, who kept alive the memory that united a family." Martha read it silently. Then she closed the book, placed her wrinkled hand over the page, and smiled with glistening eyes. That evening, after Martha retired to her room, Olivia and Edward sat on the porch under a sky full of stars. The book rested between them, its soft spine already creased from many readings. Edward reached for Olivia's hand. Their fingers intertwined gently, like the roots of that imaginary oak, unseen but unshakable. "I thought I was losing you," Olivia whispered, "interpreting your silence as distance. Was my greatest mistake." Edward kissed her hand tenderly. "And I thought I was protecting you, when what I should have been doing was sharing. Even the burdens. Even the pain." They sat in silence, the kind that feels safe. The porch light glowed softly on the cover of the book. What had begun as a secret that nearly tore them apart had turned into the very story that bound them together again. "Some chapters end," Olivia murmured, watching the lit windows of the house where a new kind of family was blossoming, "so that even richer stories can begin."